this has evolved. I mean, I can remember when we used to type our stories and on typewriters, the people in the media today don't know what a typewriter is. My wife doesn't know why I keep them, but I still keep them. I have them in my attic.
Must admit, it's a lot easier typing on a computer.
We're joined by Flyers beat writer Sam Carchidi from Philadelphia Flyers. We read this stuff on Philly.com.
They go fast on it because he's a skipper.
We're following Sam around like he's some movie star. What's going on?
I don't get it. I don't know.
The cameras are on our faces here.
They're doing a life, the life of a sports writer. For some reason, they picked me.
Well, Sam, I'm picking you again, and I'm glad you're here. Welcome everybody who's part of Karls Korner episode 4, and with my dear friend from way back from our Glassboro State College days, my friend Sam Carchidi, who's had a phenomenal career in reporting sports in the Philadelphia market for primarily the Philadelphia Inquirer. And before that, a small paper here in the South Jersey area. Now, I'm here in California, and the technology is wonderful that we could be on coast to coast almost. And welcome, Sam. Thank you for being on this episode. And welcome. That's all I can say is welcome again. And
great to see you, Carl. Awesome to see you. And my old WGLS buddy from our Glassboro State radio days.
Our Sunday night's sports program. How were we on for like an hour or 2 hours?
I don't remember, to be honest with you, but I know we had to get the AP ticker and read poll news off the AP, and we had to ad lib, and we had fun. We talked a lot of Flyers back then as well.
Well, yeah, we have pretty much the same background as far as sports go. Before we did our little prep before we went live, we talked about our youth with the youth of today, but with the use of computers and their phones, they're trying to do games and whatever. But we went out and played ball. We were outside all day, summertime. In the winter, we would play snow football in the snow. And you were just saying about playing just wiffle ball. But yeah, we come from a different era, and sports was our main thing that kept us going with the Philadelphia.
We played a lot of street hockey, and we actually, in my house, we played street hockey. I don't know how my mom, rest her soul, put up with us, but we played street hockey inside our house and we had a little den, and the piano bench was the goal. And if you can believe that, and we just would fire slap shots off the wall, and I don't know how she let us do that, but God bless her.
Well, you know my cousin Vince, and we've had a couple talking with cousins, and we would talk about his family's place in the northeast of Philadelphia. I was in Barrington, and we would use a sock, and we use like our little goals. We would use a sock, and we would make up games. But you brought up street hockey. This is after we were doing that Tom Hoffman, but I was a referee, and I actually had the Runnymede Street Hockey League on Garden State Cable, their championship game against Cherry Hill against Barrington. And people just think that, playing street hockey or whatever is a new fad. Back then, that was after our ragtag group with, Tom Hoffman's crew, when we used to play at in Blackwood, that school, and what was it?
Highland High School. Yeah, it was in the mid-'70s. Yep.
Yeah, that had no background. You shoot the ball pit, and you'd have to run for like 60 yards.
Yeah.
So anyway, Sam, we were both at Glassboro. I went another direction. You started right immediately at the Record Breeze, to give you a little bit of a background.
Yeah, little paper in South Jersey, and I cut my teeth there, and then I went to the Philadelphia Inquirer as a part-timer, covering mostly high schools, loved every minute of it for about 20 years. But during that time, I also covered Phillies baseball, and I guess for the last 16 years, I covered the Philadelphia Flyers hockey team, also did the Eagles for a year, and a lot of other fun stuff. But it really did seem like work. It was, I never looked at a clock like people say, when's this day going to end? I always wanted more time because I always had, stories to do or ideas, and it never seemed like a job. So I was fortunate really to to have a job that I really loved. And I always tell my kids, make sure you're doing something that doesn't seem like work. And if you can, you're going to be very lucky. And I'm one of the lucky ones. But I wanted to be a pro athlete, like I'm sure you did, and thousands of others did when we were growing up, and quickly found that I wasn't going to be good enough. And I said, well, the second best thing is being a sports writer. You get paid to watch these games. And I used to go to old Connie Mack Stadium with my best friend. We were like 9 years old, 10 years old. And his father, Jack Carchidi, believe it or not, covered the Phillies for the Courier Post in New Jersey. So he would take us occasionally to the games, and we would get to sit in the press box at 8, 9 years old. And I looked at these guys that were covering the game. They're eating free ice cream, drinking free soda, eating free popcorn. And I looked at them and I said, these guys get paid to watch baseball? This is a pretty good gig. And that kind of stuck with me, even though I was only, like I said, maybe 9 years old. And so in the back of my mind was that one day, if I can't make it as a pro athlete, I'm gonna be a sports writer. And so I got to thank Jack Carchidi for planting a seed when I was real young. And I'm fortunate it did work out.
What got you first? You went immediately to the Record Breeze after college?
I did. I was actually working for the Record Breeze during college, and actually started working for the Inquirer during college too. They came in to one of our classes and said they need somebody to write the football shorts, like maybe 2 paragraphs on each game. And I think that was my junior year in college. And so every Saturday I would go to their office and write shorts on football. And then I had some story ideas and asked them if they would take certain stories, and they did. And then, but I did that for a lot of years. I did that for the Score Service for 7 years as a part-timer before I got a full-time job there. And so it took a lot of perseverance, but thankfully, it worked out. So I was actually writing for 3 different papers at one time just to pay bills, because when you're a part-timer, you don't make much money. And
right.
And it took me 7 years to get where I wanted to be. So, but when I look back on it, they were great years.
Yeah. So how old were you when you with this phenomenal picture here, Sam?
Oh, that's with me and Michael Jack Schmidt. I'm probably, I want to say 19 or 20, and working for the Record Breeze, because a weekly paper. And that's probably 1975. And
before they really started getting good.
Yeah, they were just on the verge. I remember covering the playoffs in 76 and 77, the famous Black Friday game against the Dodgers, where the Phillies blew a 4-2 lead with 2 outs and nobody on base in game 3. It was a best-of-5 series. And then they lost that game 5-4. Vic Davalillo, Manny Mota had big hits. There was a missed call at first base. Davey Lope should have been out. Ground ball to Schmidt, deflected off him, went to Larry Bowa. He barehanded it, and in one motion through to first, Lopes was out by a quarter of a step. And if you look at the replay, you'll see that. But there was no instant replay back then. If there was, that game would have changed. The Phillies would have won, and they probably would have gone to the World Series that year. But unfortunately, there was no instant replay back then. Dodgers pulled out the game 5-4, and the Phillies didn't win it till 1980. But some think that 1976 and 77 Phillies team might have been their best ever. They were really a powerhouse. But then they got Pete Rose in 79. That kind of put them over the top. But some great memories during that time. No
I was at the Black Friday. I was at the Black Friday game, Sam. So you don't have to tell me. I was there.
Yeah. And of course, the famous blunder was all year long, Danny Ozark was the Phillies manager.
Right.
Pardon me?
Yeah, you didn't take out Greg Luzinski.
Yeah, he didn't take out Greg Luzinski in left field. All year he had taken Luzinski out and put Jerry Martin in as a defensive replacement. And I'll never forget, after the game, there was a fly ball, I should say, and Luzinski hit off his glove near the wall. Martin undoubtedly would have caught it. I'll never forget after the game, first question to Ozark was, why did you not bring in Jerry Martin as a defensive replacement? You know, you've done that all year. And Ozark's response was, well, I figured if the game was tied or we were behind in the bottom of the ninth, I wanted Bull's bat in there in that inning. Well, that's negative thinking. The Phillies were ahead 4-2. You know, you want to lock down the win. You don't think the Dodgers are going to score 2 or 3. And you know, it was a major blunder. No question.
Now, was he manager of the Dodgers during that time?
Yeah, that's Walt Olson. Yeah, I don't know where you get these pictures from, but they're great. Yeah, that's
Sam. This is from the documentary I did. This is just a freeze frame because I went around your basement with all the memorabilia you had.
Yeah, that's the late great Walt Olson, and yeah, he was probably in his late 60s maybe there, but you know, he just had some great teams there, and yeah, that was probably around the same time. That was probably 76 or 77, I'd say. And yeah, I remember talking to Steve Garvey, and it was one of the greatest interviews I've ever had. He was just a real down to earth person, great guy. And you know, some of the Dodgers, Dusty Baker was on that Dodger team, and let's see who else. They probably had Billy Grabarkowitz, Wes Parker. I could go on and on. Lefevre, Yeager was the catcher. Bert Hooton was a pitcher, and if you remember, the Phillies on the Black Friday game booed him off the mound. The Phillies fans booed him off the mound because he was wild, and with each ball, the boos got louder and louder, and Bert Hooton lost it. He lost his control, lost his cool, got taken out of the game after walking 3 or 4 batters through his glove against the dugout, and it looked like the Phillies were on their way. As I said, they had a 4-2 lead in that game with 2 outs and nobody on base in the 9th, and the Dodgers pulled down a miracle and won the game.
They said they had the next night with Carlton. We're going to get
in the rain, in the heavy rain.
No, the pouring rain, where the commissioner made sure he didn't have an umbrella or a hat on just to show, oh, we're going to play.
Yeah,
and what happened?
Bowie Kuhn, yeah. Game should never have been played. In fact, I took my time getting to that game because it was a downpour, as you said, and figured there's no way it's going to start on time. But everything was for TV, and they started on time. It was a monsoon, and they played in that. I think the Phillies lost 4-1, if I remember right. Yeah. And but it was, just deplorable conditions. They never should have played it, and they did. Dodgers won, and they were on their way to the World Series.
Now, I have to say, we're recording this about, 2.5, 3 hours before Game 7, Phillies in Arizona. And hopefully they'll win and not have people jumping off to the 2 bridges that go between Philly and New Jersey, to Ben Franklin and the Walt Whitman. And hopefully they'll be able to go to the World Series. But as we know, anything could happen. That's why, last night's loss was tough. But we have them tonight. But, hey, hopefully they'll do it. So
Game 7, anything. This is the first Game 7 in the Phillies' history. I just do not have a good feeling right now about this game. I hope things change. The I think that's how you pronounce it, the Arizona pitcher, young rookie, just handcuffed them the last game. He's going tonight. Ranger Suarez has had a phenomenal run. In fact, his ERA is lower than Sandy Koufax's in postseason play. And he's going up against him. So it's going to be a nail biter, I think. And the Phillies, big bats, they were silent the last game.
They were non-existent.
If they're silent again, Arizona will win the game. So
big bats were one for 18, weren't they? So that was crazy.
Yes. Yeah, and Castellanos is 1 for 19 in the series. So that can't happen, or the Phillies will be going home.
So fast forward a little bit. You're at the Inquirer, and you were doing mostly high school, correct?
Yes. And Phillies baseball, too. Did a lot of Phillies baseball.
Which was good. But then after, 2008 or 2009, when who left that went to Comcast, or
Yeah, Tim
And you guys
Panaccio
were-
left, and I took his
Yeah.
spot in 2008-9 at the Inquirer, and yeah, took over the Flyers beat, and not a great year, but the next year, 2009-10, was one of the greatest Flyers years ever. They were struggling to make the playoffs, and they made it on a shootout win on the final day of the regular season. Got into the playoffs as a real low seed, and then upset New Jersey in the first round, shocked Montreal in the second. I'm sorry, shocked Boston in the second round. They trailed 3-0 and trailed 3-0 in Game 7. Came back all the way back, won 4 straight, and won 4-3 in Game 7 after trailing 3-0. And they just seemed like a team of destiny. Then they beat Montreal 4 out of 5, got to the finals, and I thought they were going to win the cup. It was a Cinderella story. You couldn't have written it any better. And of course, they lost to the Blackhawks in Game 6. And but the key to that whole series was they had a big lead in Game 1 and lost 6-5. And if they win that, they probably win the cup. And so, as you know, Carl, they haven't had a Stanley Cup since you were a season ticket holder way back in 74, 75, and they won the previous year. So it's been almost a 50-year drought. And I'm fortunate I'm co-writing a TV project right now, a TV series. We hope it's 8 parts for 2 years, so 16 parts altogether on the Broad Street Bullies of that era. And it's basically a story about the Flyers off the ice more so than on the ice. Everybody knows what happened on the ice. They won 2 straight cups, and they were the darlings of Philadelphia, but despised by the league and despised by fans around the league who weren't in Philadelphia because of their
except January 11, 1976, when they played the Russians.
But because of their fisticuffs and all their rough play and their physicality, people hated them. But as you said, the game against the Russians, everybody was for them then. But so we're writing this, and we're gonna talk to people. We talked to almost all the players and their wives and people that work for the team, and we're gonna show you what those people were like off the ice. I'd say 25% of it is going to be about hockey, but the rest of it is their personalities. Dave Schultz and Bobby Clark and Fred Shiro and Ed Snyder and on. What their personalities, what their day was like off the ice, and the conflicts and the ups and the downs. And I don't know if you or viewers have seen Winning Time, the Lakers story about Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Similar to that, only I think it's more positive than that. More positive story. So we're excited about it, and we're in the middle of writing the second episode now, and then we're going to show it to Netflix and HBO, and hopefully we'll get it on the air in maybe by the fall of 2024. That's our goal anyway. So, but those Broad Street
Reached out to
Bullies,
the person that I knew that was part of that, but obviously they declined for other reasons. But now, have you started shooting yet, or are you just still writing it?
Oh no, we have to write it first, and we, like I said, we're on the second episode. We may have to do a sizzle, which, as you know, is like a 6 or 7 minute synopsis of the whole thing. Now, if we do that, then we'd have to shoot, with actors. This is not a documentary; it's actors and actresses playing the characters. So we may have to do a sizzle and show that to the networks. Or hopefully they'll be so interested in it and engrossed by the what is written that they'll give us the go-ahead to do it, and that's our hope anyway. And like I said, we were hopeful of doing it, having it ready for 2024, the fall of 2024, because that would be exactly 50 years since they won their last cup.
Well, like I said, I would be looking forward to it. If I could help out in any way as one of those rabid fans in that spectrum, let me know. And, I'm out here too if there's anything I can help out with.
Yeah, you can be one of the crazy fans in the stands.
I'll be old now, though. But, just going back a little bit now, I know with our technology now, if we had this 20, 25 years ago, and person that we knew that had this little local TV show throughout South Jersey, and how I actually ended up meeting you again after so many years was with this show.
Wow, Frank the Animal by Lois. Who's that guy
Yes.
with the black hair on the right? Wow.
I don't know. I can't remember him back in the day, but it just so happens that, Lucy was ahead of her time, having a daily sports show from 6 to 7 on local.
In Atlantic City, yeah.
It was out of Atlantic City, but it just so happens that channel, was on this cable system that went all the way up to, Camden County. And, but if we had this access now, it would have been amazing. So this is how we ended up getting our friendship again, because I just happened to, because I was living in the area at the time. I go, what the heck, dear Sam? And I remember I called up and
Yeah.
say, hey, Sam, go, Carl, how you doing? And then we had our friendship from that, and we talked and whatever. But it's interesting how our lives intertwine and with everything. But then fast forwarding to almost 10, 11 years ago, we would always have lunch, talk about everything, the Flyers, whatever. But I came up with this thought, Sam, they were all doing documentaries about this player, that player, but nobody ever did a documentary about a sports writer. And he looked at me like, what are you, crazy? I said, well, look, Sam, I have this guy with, we could do this and do that. And you go, okay. And you pass it along to the Flyers management and whatever. And they allowed us gracious access. There was some of the best 6, 7, 8 weeks I've had. And, came out with that little opening segment from that documentary. And I actually have a lot of pictures from back in that whole time. I took not only that, Jack had the camera, but I had my photography and, you in action. We're talking about you, but this is the press room after a game, after that 2012 run. And that's
that was a fun time. You did a great job on that, and it's funny you say that's in the press room, because the guy who allowed us to do that, Zach Hill, was the Flyers public relations director for 30 years, and he retired last year. And there he is, right there. Right. There's Zach. Yeah, good call. Yeah, there's Zach in the front, and Zach is one of my favorite people. And he retired after last year, moved to Ohio, lives on a lake out there. But this Saturday, the Flyers are going to honor him, and they're in a new press room now. This is the first year of it, and it's going to be called the Zach Hill Press Conference Room. And so they're going to have a little ceremony on Saturday, and I'm excited to see Zach. I haven't seen him in about 6 months or so, and he was really behind this project.
How nice he is. Now, when you were out here in 2019, New Year's Eve weekend, when the Flyers were at Anaheim and the Staples Center on New Year's Eve, and you gave me that direct access, the press room and everything, and the locker rooms, whatever, and you introduced me, and you remember calling, and look, it was 12 years. Like, come on, Zach, I know you say you remember me, but no, he did remember me because we had the camera and we did that. And evidently he did see the documentary.
Yeah, no, Zach is a very sincere, genuine person. And he took his job very seriously. He used to do the 76ers at one time, and but just a wonderful person, and it's a great honor.
I know you didn't realize I was taking pictures, but this is where you're at with Wayne. I
Wayne
think
Fish, that's Michael Raffle, and that's Joe Seville, who back then was Zach Hill's assistant. He's now the #1 guy. He replaced Zach as the public relations director. And Michael Raffle was a character, and I believe he may be playing in Europe now. But boy, that brings back memories. That's
that's 2019.
How many years ago is that? That's 2012, I guess. Right?
No. This is 4 years ago. This is when you were out in Anaheim. This is when you.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I didn't. Yeah, because
I'll switch.
The hair is gray there. It was black in the other picture. Yeah, so I was wondering about that. Okay.
Now here is, I know you were doing reporting, but then you were doing Philly.com. You were actually doing what? A video intro and outro for that, for this website?
Yeah, we would do a post-game wrap-up after the game. We would do it, and they would put that on the website. It was called Philly.com then. It's now called Inquirer.com now. And yeah, we had a good time doing that. In fact, Dave Isaac, who ended up leaving Philly.com and going to the Courier Post, he would interview me a lot for this post game wrap up, and then he ended up getting the Flyers job for the Courier, and so we covered the Flyers together, and it's just amazing how people go from one website to another and one paper to another, and but we're all connected, and but
and
getting back to Zach Hill, we'll all be together again this Saturday, which is going to be fun. All people who covered the Flyers over the years will get together for Zach's big event.
Well, I know you probably won't remember me, but say, hey, tell him I said hello and we're doing a podcast now.
Okay,
now, I know it's all tough. And I knew Mark Narducci from Atlantic Audubon Cable back in the day, but he couldn't find a desk. So he's writing on the ground, Is
that Mark? I couldn't even tell. Yeah, I guess that is.
Let me take that off. Let me take that off so you can see. He's
yeah, I think we were on deadline, and he was writing down some notes.
That was at the Prudential Center when the Flyers were playing the Devils, and they ended up losing the series up there. And there was no chair, and he goes, "I'll just write on the floor."
Yeah, you do what you have to do. And I could see I'm probably typing my story. What we would do is write our story and send it, and then they would say, give us a couple quotes after the game's over. And maybe you had 5 minutes to deadline. So I didn't even have time to go upstairs, take the elevator. Sometimes the elevator is slow, so you have to type it out on your phone and send it over. Yeah. To save 5 minutes.
Action in a press box.
Yeah, it doesn't look much different now, but it's going to be renamed the Jay Greenberg press row next month, because Jay passed away a couple years ago, and they're going to pay tribute to the late great Jay Greenberg, who covered the Flyers for many years. But not much has changed from that view, though. Ed, from the press box, it still looks the same.
Sam, a lot of those iconic reporters have all passed, like Phil Jasner for the Sixers, and a couple of other people have passed, and it's just like, oh man, we're getting older, and they're gone, So.
Oh, we've lost so many people. Yeah, Stan Hockman and Bill Lyon and Frank Wilson. Great people.
It's a disaster.
Writers.
It's a disaster.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of,
I love Stan Hockman. I used to love reading him.
I remember him talking about, actually, when Comcast started and they started Daily News Live, that was an addictive show. And I know they would have you on every once in a while, but then actually it got to become Philly Sports Talk, and you were on there quite a bit. I know it's not the greatest of picture for you, but you being on, but
eyes closed like I'm kissing somebody.
I know, but whoever freeze framed that for you, but give you an idea that they would call you on XM and they would put you on local, TV.
Yeah, I have to give a shout out to Michael Barkan. He did a great job. He's still obviously there. It's now called NBC Sports Philadelphia. Did a great job of making everybody feel comfortable, and you need somebody like that. That's sort of the quarterback of the whole situation, and he was a great leader in doing that. So we had fun doing that show. Yeah,
but then showing that how crazy it gets the media after a game, and this is after a game, and Giroux and you being there, but it's like I'm like, I had to pinch myself all the time. I had this direct access to it, and it was simply amazing. But then with Pinocchio and Wayne waiting for a press conference afterwards, So
yeah, we tried to get in the front row because Twitter, which is now X, of course, we wanted to get videos up on Twitter. So if you're in the first row, with your phone camera, you don't have to dodge between writers, and you get a clear shot. So I would always try to get in the front row, so whoever was doing the interview, you could get a quick 40-second video and send it over to Twitter and post it real quick. Stuff you didn't even have to think about, obviously, 10 years before that. But the media world has changed, some for the better, some for the worst. But it's
showing you getting waiting for you to ask a question too. They gave you the microphone, but somebody was still talking.
That was probably Peter Lavalette press conference, I think.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So, yeah, good times, and just a different world, though. I think back to how it was then, and there's Labby. Yeah. You think
This
how
is
it was
2012
then?
now. Now, is that
what
the
it's like
furthest they've
now.
been to since then? They haven't gone
Pardon me?
any further than this. They haven't gone any further in the playoffs since that year, correct?
No, they've won one playoff series in the last 11 years. So it's been tough sledding for them. It really is. But at least they're in a major rebuild right now, and they're doing it the right way. I think in the past they've had kind of a half-assed rebuild, if you will. I mean, they would try to go with some young kids, but then add a couple free agents that they thought might get them to sneak in the playoffs. And that shouldn't be the concern. The concern, who cares if you just make the playoffs, if you're just going to go right out? The concern should be to build with youth. And when you do get in the playoffs, by the time they mature and you do get there, you're not just a playoff team, but you're a legitimate Stanley Cup contender. And they really haven't been that since 2010. So, yeah, we'll see. I think they have new management now with Danny Briere and Keith Jones, and they seem to have the answers, and they have connections to other teams, and when they do get closer, then they can start adding free agents. But right now, there's no need to add a big time free agent because it's not going to be the guy to push you over the top. But as these young guys develop, guys like Noah Cates and Cam York, and I could go on and on. As they develop, Tyson Forster and Bobby Brink, but as they develop, and maybe a couple of years from now, that'll be the time to add the free agents, and hopefully that'll put them over the top. They have a goalie that can, win a cup, I think, with Carter Hart, but they don't have all the pieces around him. But it's going to take some time and patience, but at least they have a plan now that they're going to do a major rebuild. Actually started a little bit last year, and they're continuing it this year, and I think it's a good plan.
Well, Sam, I have to say that I remember a couple of years ago when a certain incident about a certain statue, I won't go into detail, I called you railing about it, and I think you know what I'm talking about. And I say,
oh yeah, we can talk about it. Kate Smith statue was
it's
covered.
The curse of Kate. Now, do you really think that
a lot
would
of
have
people
happened?
a lot of people say that, and
if you really think if Ed Snyder was still there, that would have happened?
No question, it would not have. No, it just Kate had done some things in the past when she was like 20 years old. She sang a song for a movie that the producer told her to sing. What, she'd have a choice, and and some African American people also sang the song.
1940s.
Pardon me?
It was in the 1940s this happened.
Yeah, did I say the 20s? She was in her
20s. Yes.
20s. Yeah, I'm sorry. And if anything, Kate Smith was someone who fought for equal rights. She had African Americans on her show. She gave them their big breaks. She was one of the most famous people in America in the 40s. Not only did she have her own national TV show, she had her own national radio show, which was on a couple times a week. And she promoted togetherness of the races. And the Flyers did no research on it, unfortunately. And the Yankees had taken God Bless America off the air because they said it had racist, some of her songs had racist overtones back in the 40s and 30s. And as I said, Kate had nothing to do with that. And the Flyers, just in a knee-jerk reaction, followed the next day and did the same thing. And it was totally unfair. It's just a shame, as you mentioned, that Ed Snyder wasn't around. But that statue is in hiding. It's very close, I'm told, to the Wells Fargo Center, but it's in storage. And hopefully one day it'll be taken out and they'll rectify it. But yeah, it's a sore spot with me as well. And to thousands of fans, too, I can tell you from the emails that I get especially when it happened. I got hundreds, and I mean hundreds of emails from irate fans.
Yeah, and I won't talk anymore about it, but it's just a matter. It's a shame that our current state of affairs is like that. But going on another topic, I call you a prolific author with books. Let's talk about your writing and the books that you've had out there, and a little bit of background on some of them. And I know I was there for a book signing with Bill, one of the iconic announcers in Philadelphia. But I'll have
that was one of my most favorite books I did. Bill Camel, for those who know, was a broadcaster. Here's the book here. Bill Camel, the voice of Philadelphia sports. And in fact, the first name that I proposed was Bill Camel, the voice of Philadelphia. And Bill said, I'm not the voice of Philadelphia. That's John Facenda. I'm not the voice of Philadelphia. So we changed it to the voice of Philadelphia sports. And he went with that.
You should have said that was the voice of God. Facenda was the voice of God.
That's true. Well said. But we had a great time doing the book, and we had the nice thing is we had a CD of Bill's famous calls that went with the book. So his final seconds of his call of the Eagles NFL championship game. There was no Super Bowl back then in 1960. That's on the CD. We also have his call, Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game, calling Richie Allen majestic home runs going over the roof at Connie Mack, and on and on. And
you don't remember the one I always loved. Frank Robinson had one over Coca-Cola and called it a transcontinental blast.
Oh, yeah. He was a wordsmith, and he just had a way of a calming influence too. When he talked, and he calmed you down, and you felt like you were talking to your uncle. You just felt like you were having a conversation with him. Just a wonderful man who unfortunately passed away about 6-7 years ago now. And I miss Bill so much. He was the voice of the 76ers, and he was there during some good times when Wilt scored his 100 points, but also there during some tough times when they were 9-73. And Bill was the voice of the Phillies. He was also the voice of the Eagles. He was one of WIP's first voices.
He did the 1960 championship Eagles game. He did the 1960 championship game.
Right.
But then you also have to talk about when the Phillies moved to the vet, that the sponsorships, why he wasn't brought along and Harry was brought in, is because evidently a certain beer sponsor they wanted to make a change, and that's why he left the Phillies.
He was connected. The Phillies told him that he was too connected to Ballantine beer, and the new sponsor when they went from Connie Mack to Veteran Stadium was Schmitz, and they said that was part of the reason they got rid of him. But it was a lame excuse. That wasn't really the reason, because the other announcers at that time were By Som and Rich Ashburn. They were just as connected. In fact, I have in my office a poster hanging up, and it says Ballantine 3-ring beer, and it's got a picture of Bill with Richie Ashburn and By Som. So, and poor Harry Callis came from Houston. He was a good friend of Bill Giles, who became the Phillies owner. That's how he got here, yes. And that's how he got here. But poor Harry was kind of in the middle. He said when he was hired, he just assumed he would be the fourth guy in the crew. He didn't realize Bill would be gone. He was friends with Bill because Bill, he traveled to Philadelphia and would sit and talk with Bill all the time as the Houston Astros announcer. So Harry was caught in the middle. But to their credit, they had a great relationship. They even worked some Big Five games together at one point down the road, and they were friends. Bill's problem was not with Harry at all, and Bill got a raw deal, but he bounced back on his feet and got the job at the 76ers, and then he became a pioneer when WIP went to All Sports Radio. Exactly. Bill was one of the first guys on there, and he really gave them credibility. And
I know
just did a great job.
He had the 10 a.m. to 2 slot. But
yes.
I'll never forget, there used to be Tom Bodette from Motel 6. He used to be an advertiser. And one time he came in out of the commercial, he says, well, they ain't going to leave a light on for me. So he had those little comments about stuff. So Sam, the little couple, another 5 minutes that we have left, why don't you just talk about some of the other books that you've done?
Yeah, here.
And, let the
I know
people
you
know.
told me to grab them. Here's
Hold
one,
it up, hold it up a little bit more. There you go.
Miracle in the Making, the Adam Talaferro story. It's the first one I did. Been fortunate to do, I think, 5 books. I'm working on the 6th now on the Broad Street Bullies and kind of a retrospective on 50 years later. But the Adam Talaferro book, and I'll talk about that in a second. But this was with the great Lou Nolan. If These Walls Could Talk. Lou, of course, has been their public address announcer since their inception. I should say he's been with the Flyers since their inception. He became the Flyers PA announcer in '72, but from '67 to '72, he was in their PR department. But he's a gem too, just like Bill Camel. And there you go. Who's that famous guy in the middle? That was at Barnes and Noble. In fact, Lou and I, they asked us to do another book signing, even though that book came out, it must be 6-7 years ago. They asked us to do another one, another book signing at Barnes and Noble. So we're probably going to do that in December. If I start talking about the Adam Talaferro book, that was such an inspiring book to do. For those that don't know, Adam was a defensive back for Penn State, was paralyzed making a tackle at Ohio State in 2000. He was a true freshman, 18 years old at the time, and was told by 3 different doctors from 3 different hospitals that he would never walk again. And miracle, he walked out of McGee Hospital in Philadelphia a few months later. And, he still walks with a pronounced limp. He still has some nerve damage in his hand. So his hand is probably like this. But, he's, other than that, he's totally healthy. He got married, has 2 beautiful kids. He went back to school. He can never play sports again, of course, but went back to school, got his law degree, worked for probably 3 or 4 different firms. And then he worked for Bristol Myers, and now he works for Johnson & Johnson. And he's also in politics in South Jersey as an assemblyman, and just an amazing story. And we're hopeful of telling his story and making a movie out of his story. We've been talking to a lot of people about that, and that's our hope right now. And Jeff Hare, who is doing great work on our project with the Broad Street Bullies, is also involved with that. Jeff is a producer, movie maker. He works, does a lot of stuff for Lifetime, and has done some great movies on the screen as well. So he's involved in that project as well, along with the Broad Street Bullies project. So yeah, I've done a couple other Flyers books, and it's been a fun ride. I remember talking to the late great Bill Lyon when I was starting the Adam Talaferro book, and getting some advice from him on whether he thought it was worthwhile to do it, because it's very time consuming. And he said, if you have a chance, do it, because there's not a more satisfying feeling to, have a book done that you can be proud of and have your name on it. And he was right. I did that with great Scott Brown. We did that together. And Scott he went to Penn State years earlier, but he kind of did all the legwork at Penn State, and I did all the legwork in New Jersey and Philadelphia with McGee Hospital and with some of Adam's teammates, and we put it together. I would write one chapter, he would write the next, and we went back and forth, and emailing each other and different ideas. And I think my dad gave me probably the biggest compliment. He said, I read the book and I can't tell who did what chapter, because you both have similar styles. And I said, that's a compliment, because we wanted it to read very smoothly. We didn't want it to seem like there were 2 different styles. And so, Scott and I put that together, and Scott has probably done 7 or 8 books since then. But getting back to Adam Talaferro, what a wonderful person. And I hope that his story can inspire other people who have had, tragic injuries. But he's one of the fortunate ones that beat paralysis, and they've made a lot of advances on paralysis. And that was probably the most inspiring book I did. But I think the most fun books I've ever done were the Lou Nolan book and the Bill Camel book. They were a little lighter. I also did a book on Kevin Everett of the Buffalo Bills, who was paralyzed, and that was inspiring as well. He was a tight end with Buffalo, and his career ended. But
how about the one that you were promoting when you were out here with Wayne? It was the 50, had the big 50 on it. I know I have a
yeah, that was the 50th, the big 50. It was 50 things that kind of identified the Flyers. And Wayne Fish and Wayne has covered the team since 75, 76. And yeah, we had a great time doing that book as well. I forgot we were promoting that back then. But yeah, so I've been fortunate over the years. And like I said, the latest book we're doing is Jeff Hare and I are doing a book on kind of a retrospective 50 years later of the Broad Street Bullies, where they are now, and some behind the scenes stuff that people don't know from the 1970s.
Well, yeah, it's I knew I had a picture of the one with you and Wayne, but I was going to play that little clip I did off my cell phone for a bit of promotion. But we could hold this. Sam, I'm inviting you to come back for another time because we've been speaking for a little over 45 minutes, but we still have a lot more to talk about, don't we?
We do. We could probably talk for a month, and
look,
still have a lot more to talk about.
I'm saying, please, if you could be maybe a once a month, maybe once every couple of week guest to come on and give us the update on the progress of the Flyers project, and then if you could actually have the producer on here, maybe talk about
Jeff Hare,
too.
sure. Jeff lives near you. He's in Los Angeles, California. So yeah,
it's
that
only
would
about
be
75 miles. Yeah, if you could reach out to him, I could, hey, I'm who I am. I'm not in any, in situation like he is, but maybe I could give him some little insight about the way it was back day as a fan, because, we didn't have a lot. And just thank you for your friendship. And then I have to bring back 4 years ago when you invited me to your friend's place, that Tony's, that we realized that he's just passed recently. You were out here, but this was on the deck of his house in Laguna, which
Laguna
was
Beach,
absolutely, which was absolutely amazing. And it's just time goes by too fast, and just to be New Year's Eve at a Flyers game at the Staples Centers was really, really nice. But
and I have to give Tony. You mentioned Tony Ciabattoni. He's one of our biggest sponsors and supporters, and he was the executive producer of Bullies, and so he will inspire us to get this thing made. This 2-year series that we hope is 16 episodes, and just a great guy. He lived in California, but he was originally from Wilmington, Delaware, so he had Philadelphia roots. If you're from Wilmington, Delaware,
his
basically
place, his place was just not. Yeah, was in California. Anybody who knows California out here, because when I came home, my cousin would say, "Where were you, Laguna?" She thought I was back, behind the Pacific Coast Highway. I said, "No, we were on the cliffs. The house was built into the cliffs," and I showed the pictures of it. So really, there again, I have to say, thank you so much for that experience.
Yeah, well, that was I think I told you this before, but he bought that from Ozzie, from David Nelson. Ozzie and Harry actually owned that house, and then Tony had knocked it down and built an Italian mansion there, right on the beach.
Yeah.
But he was friends with David Nelson, the son, of course, of Ozzie and Harriet, and David gave them a lot of memorabilia and mementos from the Nelson family, which Tony proudly displayed in the house, pictures of the Nelsons and like ashtrays that little Ricky Nelson had made when he was younger, and even had a refrigerator from the Ozzie and Harry TV show, which, believe it or not, still works from 1950 to now. And so a lot of quirky but interesting things. And Tony was quite a guy. And I should mention too, Jeff Hare, the director of our Bullies series, he's lived in LA for 35 years, but he's also a Philly guy. He's from Roxborough. So he was a 10-year-old kid when the Flyers won the cup. So he loves this project because he said it takes me back to the days when I was when you're 10, 12 years old, that's when you're really into sports, and you don't forget those games. And so that's why he really wants to make this project, because that was, he said, as far as his sports interest, that was the pinnacle for him. A 10-year-old kid and your team wins the cup, and you don't forget that. So
well, we were 20-year-old kids going through the same thing. So, and how we did it.
Yeah,
So,
it meant a lot to us too.
Yeah, so I want to thank you. I know we're at the 50-minute mark, and I know we could have 4 more hours of this, but why don't we, close it out on this and just say, hey, anytime you have an update on the project and anything else you want to plug, please, anytime we could do this again. And anybody who's watching down the road, because we're recording this and this is going to be a broadcast probably within a couple of days on my channels, YouTube and Facebook. But as you can say, like, subscribe to the channel, make any comments. We'll take good or bad, constructive criticism. I hopefully we didn't offend anybody today. But Sam, I'll say thanks again, and just stay on when we finish recording. Just stay on a little bit, so this whole technical thing will be finished. And
thank you for having me. Anytime, Carl. Anything for you,
Sam. I appreciate it, and we're going to have another one. And hey, for tonight, go Phillies! Let's hope. Hopefully they win and it'll be in the World Series, and we can talk next time with a
fingers crossed. It's not going to be easy. Yeah, fingers crossed.
You think we'll have another parade down Broad Street? Thanks, buddy.
Talk to you.